You felt it your whole life. In classrooms, at family dinners, at parties where everyone else seemed to be operating from a script you were never given. A persistent, quiet sense that you were watching the room from slightly outside of it. Not better, not worse, just different, in a way you couldn't fully explain, in a way nobody else seemed to notice or share. And the most confusing part? You got good at pretending it wasn't there. But it never went away. Today we're going to name exactly what that feeling is, where it comes from, why it's structural and not accidental, and why intelligent people, specifically, feel it more acutely than almost anyone else. The feeling has a name. Psychologists call it chronic differentness, a persistent, low-grade awareness that one's inner experience, values, and way of processing the world are fundamentally out of sync with the dominant social environment. It's not loneliness, exactly, though it often lives beside loneliness. It's not arrogance, though it's sometimes misread that way. It's the specific experience of being a certain kind of mind in a world that wasn't quite built for it. And it begins earlier than most people realize. Number 1. You notice things others didn't, and that set you apart before you had words for it. For most intelligent people, the feeling of being different doesn't begin in adulthood. It begins in childhood, in the specific experience of noticing things that others didn't seem to notice. Asking questions that made adults uncomfortable, finding the standard answers insufficient, feeling bored or out of place in environments that everyone else seemed to find perfectly adequate. Developmental psychologists call this asynchronous development, the pattern in which high IQ children develop cognitively and emotionally faster than their peers, creating a persistent gap between their inner world and the social world around them. The child, not trying to be different, the difference, arriving automatically, built in. And the earliest social lesson many intelligent children learn: being fully yourself creates distance. The self-editing begins early. The performance of fitting in, years in the making before you were old enough to name what you were doing. Number 2. Your reference group has always been too small. Every human being needs a reference group, people who share enough of your values, humor, depth, and way of seeing the world that you feel genuinely recognized. For most people, the reference group is large. It overlaps naturally with family, neighborhood, school, workplace. For intelligent people, particularly those with unusual depth, intensity, or ways of thinking, the reference group is structurally smaller. Not because they are superior, because the specific combination of traits, the depth, the intensity, the need for genuine connection, the discomfort with performance, is statistically rarer. Psychologists call this the reference group scarcity problem. The fewer people who share your specific inner landscape, the more encounters you have with people who are kind, genuine, well-meaning, and still not quite your people. You weren't imagining it. The group you were looking for, real. Just smaller than the groups most people find naturally. Number 3. You process experience differently, and the difference is invisible. Here is one of the most isolating aspects of chronic differentness. It's not visible. You look normal. You function normally. You hold conversations, meet deadlines, navigate social situations. But underneath, your experience of those same situations is fundamentally different from what most people around you are having. More layered, more analyzed, more emotionally complex, more expensive to process. Psychologists call this invisible cognitive divergence, the experience of processing reality at a different depth and intensity than the people around you, with no external signal that this is happening. The gap, real, invisible, never discussed. You sit in the same room as everyone else. You participate in the same conversation. And you are, simultaneously, having a completely different internal experience, one that would require too much explaining to share, and that most people in the room wouldn't fully recognize even if you did. The loneliness of this, not dramatic, structural, quiet, persistent. Number 4. You've spent years editing yourself to fit. The feeling of being different doesn't just create isolation. It creates a specific behavioral adaptation, the editing of self. Over years of social experience, noticing which parts of you land well and which parts create distance, intelligent people develop a sophisticated practice of self-modulation, simplifying their language, softening their intensity, choosing not to go deeper when they sense the other person can't follow. Psychologists call this chronic self-concealment, the sustained suppression of authentic self-expression in response to social environments that have historically not received that expression well. The adaptation. Intelligent, functional, socially effective. The cost. A persistent, low-grade grief for the version of yourself that never quite gets to be fully present. A background sense that the person people know and like is a curated version. That the full version has never quite been seen. Not because anyone was cruel. Because the full version required an audience that was rarely available. Number 5. You feel different even among people who are supposed to be your people. This is perhaps the most disorienting layer. You find people who are smart, who are curious, who go deeper than most, and you still feel the gap. Not always. Not with everyone. But often enough to notice. Psychologists call this nested differentness, the experience of feeling out of place even within subgroups that were supposed to resolve the feeling. Smart people who still feel different among smart people. Creative people who still feel like outsiders among creatives. The reason? Intelligence is not one thing. The specific combination of traits that produces chronic differentness, the particular depth, the emotional intensity, the specific way of connecting ideas, doesn't automatically find its match even in high-achieving, intellectually engaged environments. The search for genuine recognition, not over when you find people who are smart. Sometimes just beginning. Number 6. The feeling was never the problem. The interpretation was. For most of their lives, people who feel chronically different interpret the feeling as evidence of something wrong with them. Too much. Too intense. Too complicated. Not built for normal life. Not capable of just fitting in like everyone else. But here is what psychology actually shows. The feeling of chronic differentness, in people with high cognitive and emotional complexity, is not a symptom of dysfunction. It is an accurate perception. Your inner experience is different. Your processing is more complex. Your needs for depth and authenticity are less commonly met. The feeling, not a distortion. A precise reading of a real situation. The problem was never the difference. The problem was the meaning you were taught to attach to it. That different means wrong. That not fitting in means broken. That the gap between you and the room is your failure to be more like the room. It isn't. The gap is structural, real, and it comes with costs, and with capacities that most people never develop, precisely because they never had to navigate from the outside of the room. The truth. You were never broken. You were never too much. You were a specific kind of mind, operating in environments that were not calibrated for it, developing, over years, the skills of someone who has always had to translate themselves in order to be understood. Asynchronous development. Reference group scarcity. Invisible cognitive divergence. Chronic self-concealment. Nested differentness. The misread meaning of the gap. These are not character flaws. They are the precise mechanisms behind a feeling that has followed you your whole life. And the most important thing you can do with this information is stop spending energy trying to close the gap by becoming less. The gap doesn't close by shrinking yourself. It closes, slowly, partially, never completely, by finding the people for whom your version of the world is not too much. They exist. There are fewer of them than you'd like, but you recognize each other immediately. If this video finally named something you've carried your whole life, subscribe to Wired Differently. Because the most exhausting thing about feeling different is not knowing that you're not alone in it. New video every week. Because understanding what you actually are is the only thing that makes the difference livable. You were never too much. You were always exactly enough. Just for a smaller room than most people need. Understand yourself. Understand everyone.